Molweni dumelang sanibonani Mzansi Afrika budede bumnyama kuvela ukhanya kuba kaloku ivelile i-expressions. Welcome to it. Eli ke liqonga lakho lokuba uzityande igila. Well, happy freedom month. Sikuye kaloku inyanga yakho enkululeko. Kwaye umbesixovulayo namhlanje we're looking at the progress that we've made as young people in terms of a transformation, but also we are looking at the challenges esijongene nazo. Owona mbuzo kukuba ingaba lenkululeko sithetha ngayo ingaba thina silulutsha siyayiqhamla na. Well, ndimlo ke uKhalosa Kalubisi uMandlongoti. Kodwa ke lenqwelo nzobe ningayiqhubi indoda namhlanje. Ukhona uLiyema umtshakratha all the way from Mthatha. Liyema, right?
Ndiyaphila mntaso njani?
Bathatha.
Bathatha, definitely. Ngacho Mzansi Afrika, igama lam ndinguLiyema Vomisa, and it's great to be with you right here on Expressions on SABC 1. Well, speaking of which, namhlanje ke Khalosa on Expressions, we are going to be taking a look rather at Freedom Month, but with a particular focus on celebrating an international artist who's apparently doing big.
Wow.
And guess what? He is in our shows up in Mzansi Afrika. Igama lakhe, believe it or not, igama lakhe Westside Gravy, and he is here to obviously explore umculo wakhe. But if you didn't know, umculo wakhe Khalosa is mostly based about conscious topics such as racism and xenophobia. And speaking of which, Nkun kwa ingoma yakhe, which is Diaspora, talks exactly about that. Let's take a listen.
56 from East High, now we're thriving. גרים בירושלים, וגם בחיפה, הגולן ותל אביב, באר שבע, בהנגב, ואילת by the sea. אתה יודע שלא שכחתי האתיופים שעשו את הכל, מה אתם אומרים שהם לא יכולים? I'm a proud part of the diaspora. In my heart I hold Jerusalem and Africa. Kicked aside of our land and started gassing us till we put our foot down cause we had enough. Check out the flag that I'm waving. 2 blue stripes and a huge star of David. Check out the flag that I'm waving. Keep shooting rockets but you never gon' take it. Here I'm talking about the Jews will not replace us.
Well, like I had said, Gembugele Kaya, he is definitely in our shows up in Mzansi Afrika, igama lakhe Westside Gravy, and he will be collaborating with a very emerging and rather an incredible artist yalapha ke in our very own shows. Igama lakhe ke nguye uThanaka Jura, and both of these people hope to address the issues such as racism and xenophobia. And of course, our producer Ngalamzuzu esandolendisha eOR Tambo International Airport, he had a conversation with them. Let's take a look at it.
Hello Mzansi, my name is Tsokofatso Maholeho. I'm here at the OR Tambo International Airport to meet with international hip-hop artist Noah Shibindiski, also known as Westside Gravy. He is here in South Africa for the first time ever to collaborate on a song with South African artist Thanaka Jura.
Hey, great to meet you. I'm really looking forward to getting to know the people here, the different groups of people, obviously working from a musical lens with Thanaka to talk a little bit about my culture, my background, also learn from people here on the ground and also get to know the Jewish community here as they stand with us educated.
Thanaka, you are going to be in studio. What can we expect?
I'm going to make great music that's going to bring awareness to a lot of issues that are going on around the world, and we want to show that South Africa is diverse and it understands the problems of the people outside of the country. So that's what we're trying to bring in the studio.
So I'm going to be going around quite a bit. Some stuff is still getting nailed down, but be in Cape Town hopefully a little bit, obviously in Johannesburg, hopefully talking to some students as well. So really looking forward to that.
Well, it's really exciting for Westside Gravy Mzansi Afrika. And guy is that umculo as isixhobo to fight racism and xenophobia. Make sure that you do not move a muscle cause kasibuya entengisweni iproducer yethu Tseho uzawuhlala phansi naye akeve into yokubana ungubani usuka phi kwaye ithini mission yakhe njengoko elapha eMzantsi Afrika. Don't move a muscle. We'll be right back.
And all that BDS campaigning, we've dealt with worse problems and racist associations of students all acting stupid and thinking they're making differences, picking and choosing truths and not knowing what real resistance is. Say you value social justice, are you kidding us? What the hell gives you the right to tell me who's indigenous? You don't have it, you You just assume the privilege of looking at other people and telling them what their image is. You want the image to fit your twisted narrative, but your divide and conquer tactics ain't scaring this diaspora, of which I'm a proud part. I got blue and white in my veins running through my heart. And they get mad when we're surviving. The truth is, only way they like a Jew is if they're dying. So I'ma say this by the candlelight. Take a moment and remember the fallen for their sacrifice. Never again, never forget, they wanted us dead. We rose from the ashes instead. Melamdim ha-historia medor ledor. Lo yeh lanu atid im lo niskor. We wouldn't have a future if we didn't have a past. So every day we gotta take a minute and honor those who passed. Then wake up determined, cause we're returning to the ways that they tried to erase, that we're preserving. Scattered in the wind, in diaspora conditions, still maintained connection to our traditions. From Morocco to Havana to Yemen, living in Aden, Ciudad de Mexico, Buenos Aires, we're all one nation. Through all of the oppression that they
Welcome back. You're still watching Expressions right here on SABC 1. Now, we're still having a conversation about celebrating Abantu Abaculayo Apa Mzansi Africa, but not only in our own shows, because we so happen to be very, very delighted to be in the presence of Westside Gravy, who hails all the way from California, here to talk about issues of racism and xenophobia by using umculo with an artist called July.56. So that is the conversation. But before we get to that, and even sit with these two people to find really the rationale behind that kind of a collaboration, we ask you first on our poll question, but do you think thina njengabantu abatsha apha eMzantsi Afrika, we can use the arts, or do you even think the arts has the power to curb issues such as racism and xenophobia? Well, this is what you had to say.
The xenophobia chat would be obviously like you seeing a different person from a different country who may be a different skin color than you are, coming and singing about the experiences that they have there, and they're similar to the experiences that we have here. So it will show people that we're not that different as people.
When it's like that, you're making two different races meet to each other, and then basically into your racism and everything and xenophobia. So we learn each other and how there's a different caste and everything. So everybody may have that social thing over like a base. We have a common base that we can talk about.
Music connects different nations together. As you can see, there's different futures and all that. So mostly people understand each other through music.
So arts involve people coming together, people of all races, of all colors. So I think it can curb like racism, all issues we have in this world.
So you find like bands. It's not like masise band in A1. Uzothola umZulu or sonke soba umZulu, obviously uzothola umXhosa, uzothola umSuthu.
Uhileleke ukuthi lo mculo upopular kangakanani. Bangakanani abantu abazolalela ilanguage odluliselwa ngayo lo mculo lo.
It's one thing for someone to come and create an art, create a piece of art and distribute it to other people. But if people don't have the same, if the level of understanding is not where the person who created that art is, then they won't be able to understand it.
We all one people though. I see people as one though. I see people as one.
If everyone can do arts, everyone can be together.
Growing up, I would say when people ask what's it like growing up being Black and Jewish in America, my first reaction is that it was amazing. I grew up with a very loving, supportive family. I was able to celebrate my heritage and my culture and hold tight on that. Obviously, there were challenges. You know, the United States does also have a history when it comes to racial discrimination that my family went through, whether it was my mom's side having fled Jim Crow in Mississippi, moving to California where my mom was born and where I was raised, or even my dad's side of the family coming as a refugee to the U.S., as a Jewish refugee and having to deal with his challenges. But nevertheless, I think the important part of that story that stuck with me was the story of perseverance, the fact that my family made something of themselves and made sure to set those expectations that not because of or as a result of, but in spite of all those challenges that we faced, we're still gonna prosper. I think it's good to work off this structure anyway. It gives us like the parameters.
Yeah, the guidelines,
Yeah. I'm really excited to work with Tanaka. We had a chance to go over a couple different lyrics that we have and prepare. And I think that each of us are bringing a little bit of our own personal experiences We're bringing issues that are related to communities that we personally come from, and also looking at how those can be united. It's like a conversation through song where him and I have been through similar things and also been through different things, and we're able to discuss all of them. And at the same time realize that we're on this song together. This song is a bridge of both of our experiences and can kind of also showcase to people who are listening, whether they can relate or not personally, that there is that ability to connect with other people.
We got the energy, you really paved the way. My generation understands fair.
I like to get awareness across. That's the main goal, so that people understand their own input within certain types of discrimination, and they also understand where they stand with human rights violations as well. Because we might unintentionally be committing human rights violations without knowing. So songs like these could make them become aware and be like, okay, what do I add to this cause? Or what do I add to this problem as well? My views come from stories, hearing a lot of stories and reading a lot of stories online as well. And that has formed my opinion to be a little bit wary about getting into certain topics because of how it might be received by the community. It was important for me because of the personal experience, as well as my personal understanding of xenophobia and racism. And obviously witnessing such discrimination and such human rights violations, I felt like it was my obligation to be a voice for people in my generation, the youth. We don't often speak about topics this deep, and we don't dive into them because of how far it seems from us. So I decided to get into music like we are here today, to make a song about xenophobia and racism, to really spread awareness about that.
There are a lot of people who feel like they're not represented. There are a lot of young people who feel like their stories are not being told, their reality is not being told, especially when it comes to issues of discrimination or feeling marginalized. So those are definitely topics that we're going to touch on in this song, stuff that I've written about coming from my own personal experiences, and I hope that that's something that's reflected and that other people can kind of pick up on, relate to, and also examine how the theme of being perseverant in face of that can connect to their life.
Saying loud how I'm black and I'm proud. Bring the strength of ancestors who they tried but never drowned. Yeah. Only time can tell the outcome, but I'm done waiting. Only the brave can bring peace, so I'm done shaking.
Music being a home for me, right, is a place where I can be vulnerable and honest. And in the time that we're living in right now, topics of xenophobia, racism, human rights issues, essentially, they're not really touched on, and there's not a lot of spaces to really be open about your views and your thoughts. And music has been that place for me to be expressive about how I feel about human rights issues, xenophobia, racism, anti-Semitism, and also making the links between other types of discrimination as well.
Campaigning. We've dealt with worse problems and racist associations of students all acting stupid and thinking they're making differences, picking and choosing truths and not knowing what real resistance is.
Wow, interesting conversation apho noThego ethetha naye kaloku Westside Gravy, and ndizithandile kakhulu izimvo zabantwana abatsha benqina into yokubana yes singasebenzisa izixhobo ezifana nomculo, ukulwa nemibe efana ne-racism and xenophobia. When uthina apha ekhaya, make sure that you interact with us on social media. Sibhalele, siyathanda ukuba sive kuwe. Ngoku sizathi qhwe evenkileni, make sure you don't move a muscle kusekuninzi esiniphathele kona.
Growing up the way I did, parents really shaped a kid, prepared them for the worst in a world filled with hatred. My vision never shaded, never being taken by surprise when they shouting how the Jews want to replace this and that.
I think that on one end, with my work as an educator with Stand With Us, it gives me the opportunity to tell my story and also to look at the stories of fellow Jews from around the world, from a bunch of different continents who have their roots, same as me, in Israel and Jerusalem. And being able to understand their stories, my story, how they're all interconnected, and finding a good way to be able to educate the world about that. And I think furthermore, when it comes to my music, what it does is gives me a platform to talk about those issues. So growing up, I listened to a lot of different types of music. Listened to Bob Marley, listened to Sam Cooke, of course, good California boy, listened to my oldies. And a lot of West Coast hip hop. I don't have a singing voice of someone like Bob Marley or Sam Cooke, so I stuck with the hip hop. But nevertheless, what these artists were able to do was show me a little bit about their culture, the time period where they lived in, some things that I could relate to, a lot of things that I couldn't relate to. But it gave me sort of a framework of understanding how music can provide a voice and also provide a window into someone's life. So with all my experiences and my own things growing up that I had to go through, but I know other people wouldn't have to, I found music is the same way as all these other artists I just mentioned used it to showcase their experience. I always thought of music as a way that I could do the same, and also that would reflect on my community by bringing representation to my people.
We've been through it to the max, fluent in attacks, described as strange fruit, roots severed from the plant, bullets put up in the backside. As a kid I can't lie, my head preoccupied with not appearing as the bad guy.
My mother and sister give me power, essentially, and they're the ones that empower me from school to even getting into the music industry as well. So that's why I paid homage to them by making my stage name Their Birthday. In the beginning stages of my life, my father was present. He was brilliant, and that was amazing to see, to witness love as well. That's why one of the topics I like to speak about is love and the relationships we share between men and women. However, later on in life, our family did end up, splitting a little bit, and my father ended up living on his own, and that really brought a little bit of tension between us. To cope with that, I decided to get into music.
I face fear without hesitation. When it's our turn to shine, they like to underplay it. Social media telling lies, but we live in real life, so we can't fake it.
Music was really a way of expressing myself creatively and just being, number one, introverted, right? You look for things, you look for either art, or you go into writing, or you go into music or singing. And for me, music really, really became a home. And just not having a father around, obviously, it became my father. I learned a lot from it. I learned a lot about myself, a lot about my experiences. I could now have a place to actually write my experiences down, so that was amazing as well. When I say it's a home, it's like it was a place which felt familiar, and it was a place where I could be vulnerable. So music has always been something I was like, I can pour any story, whether it's like a relationship I'm having with a girl in high school, or it's something I'm dealing with in terms of depression or anxiety. Anytime I felt any tension with my own life, music has always been that one place that has been solid and consistent, like a home.
Still we find a way to smile through these generations. Still we find a way to rise to the occasion. Together we have power, don't be mistaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken.
I think that personally I never really had a lot of identity issues. I was very strong in my identity from the time that I grew up, knowing that I'm black and also knowing that I have Russian roots, and also being Jewish. So I personally didn't grow up having issues trying to figure out which way to identify, because there's never a side of me that is, separate. I'm Noah, the black Jewish rapper, and that's who I am at the end of the day. That being said, for sure, I had to face challenges going into the world as a black man in the United States. Stuff that comes with the territory. Same, my dad's side of the family having come as immigrants, as refugees, and also dealing with anti-Semitism, going out into the world like that. There's also a whole sort of challenges that people have to face when, the outside world has a certain stigma or stereotype of what it means to be black or what it means to be Jewish, and oftentimes makes those contradict each other. But a lot of times that was noise coming from the outside, not coming from within.
I sit back inside, thinking about how blessed am I that I had the guidance to learn lessons of a past time. We came up from the bottom, but we never stayed down. I remember being 2, singing along to James Brown.
A lot of my other music is centered around understanding relationships with yourself, relationships with God, relationships with women. Especially as a man in this world, it's kind of interesting how our relationships are with women. So they have taught me a lot of that, and understanding that for me really amounted to who I am right now. So that's why I added them into my name.
Right, mbukeli wami siqwela siqukumbela kanjalo inkqubo namhlanje. Ndiyathemba ke nawe apha ekhaya you really did enjoy episode yanamhlanje. Wena Liam, how was it for you?
Absolutely, it was very great for me, taking into consideration into okokubana was the very first time Expressions, and particularly xa ndifika sibe sesithetha ngomculo. Nothing can go wrong.
And nam ndiqinisekile ababukeli bakuvegazini because nikuvapha.
Yeah.
Une-vibe, jonga uyabathatha. Well, you don't ndiyithandile kakhulu with the interview namhlanje kukuba you know what, ikhona into ongayisebenzisa, ungahlali phansi nje, ikhona into ongayisebenzisa, just like Westside Gravy, which brings us into yobana thina singabantu as Africans, let us unite.
Unite is the word, definitely. Well, speaking of Westside Gravy, he will be closing us off. Abagegwe Expressions teaming up with July.56. Their song is titled Never Shaken. Dada.
Growing up the way I did, parents really shaped a kid, prepared them for the worst in a world filled with hatred. My vision never shaded, never being taken by surprise when they shouting how the Jews want to replace this and that. I've been accustomed to the chat, the lies told about my people, Jewish and I'm black. We've been through it to the max, fluent in attacks, described as strange fruit, roots severed from the plant, bullets put up in the backside. As a kid I can't lie, my head preoccupied with not appearing as the bad guy. I sit back inside thinking about how blessed am I that I had the guidance to learn lessons of a past time. We came up from the bottom, but we never stayed down. I remember being 2, singing along to James Brown, saying loud how I'm black and I'm proud. Bring the strength of ancestors, so they try but never drown.
Only time can tell the outcome, but I'm done waiting. Only the brave can bring peace, but I'm done shaking. Only time can tell the outcome, but I'm done waiting. Only the brave can bring peace, but I'm done shaking. I face fear without hesitation. When it's our turn to shine, they like to underplay it. Social media telling lies, but we live a real life, so we can't fake it. The pain of the past is still on our faces. Still we find a way to smile through these generations. Still we find a way to rise to the occasion. Together we have power, don't be mistaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken. We cannot be shaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken. We cannot be shaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken. We cannot be shaken. A young democracy that came a long way. Give us the keys so we can be your valet. We got the energy to really pave the way, cause my generation understands fair play. My generation really is the doorway to breaking bread on the same table. To breaking bread on the same table. We cannot be shaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken. We cannot be shaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken. We cannot be shaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken. We cannot be shaken. If our minds come together, we cannot be shaken.
Growing up the way I did, parents really shaped a kid, prepared me for the worst, still held expectations. The hatred I was faced with, not allowed to take up space, is a reason for me not to reach the greatness that I was destined to. And when they preventing you, you work twice as hard, cause you can't just let it get to you. Some say that we're stubborn and I say that we're resilient. Stiff-necked people written that we never give in.